If you want description, they'll give you much more than you need. Noisy typewriters and turtleneck sweaters, and each day begins with a line.
Good evening. My name is McCarthy Coyle, and you're watching a public conversation. This is, I believe, the 7th in a series of 8 weekly interview programs which we've been conducting here at Missoula Community Access Television with the help of an all-volunteer crew, the public access facility in Missoula. And by the time we wrap things up next week, we will have interviewed 16 people running for various state and federal offices. It's been a pretty hectic schedule. And tonight we have Becky Shaw, a Montana woman who, she'll refresh me on the year, opposed Jack Mudd and John Melcher in the Democratic primary. And Becky Shaw tells me that she spent, I believe, about $8,000 and garnered 22% of the vote, whereas Jack Mudd and John Melcher each spent a couple $100,000. So I've been eager to meet Becky Shaw. She's living in Clancy now. She's worked in various levels of state government and as a paralegal. She's 45 years old. She's the mother of 2 grown sons. She was born in Great Falls. She went back to school after many years and got her bachelor's degree at Carroll College. And she surfaces in the news now and again. And now she's running for the United States Senate in the primary of the Reform Party in Montana. Please welcome Becky Shaw. Thanks for coming down.
Hi.
Hiya.
Well, I'm really happy to be here tonight.
Thanks. Well, as I was saying to you earlier, and for the audience, we're going to be having a weekend marathon replay of all the interviews we've had. So the weekend before primary election, at least Missoula people will be able to, you know, if they choose, refresh and get a chance to look at some people firsthand. Mm-hmm. Becky, you explain, you ran for the Senate nomination on the Democratic Party line. What year was that?
That was 1994.
Right. And briefly, what prompted you to jump into that race then? Tell us about the percentages. Obviously, I think you have some pride in you know, the vote that you did get. And then how you've made this transition to the Reform Party. Tell us a little bit about the Reform Party. I take it it's the inheritor of the Perot, et cetera. So you can tell us about that. So why don't you just share with it? Yeah.
Okay, well, first of all, I guess as a girl, I was inspired by Jeanette Rankin, who was the first congresswoman from Montana. And we haven't had a woman in Congress since then, since 1916. I'd always wanted to run for office, and when in the Democratic primary, the candidates were, I just wasn't real pleased with either John Melcher or Jack Mudd, and had understood that there was a large percentage of the voters that were undecided, and decided it was an opportunity for me to get into the race, and so I did. I was very pleased with the outcome of the race. I campaigned for 10 weeks. My opponents campaigned for 10 months, and I spent about $4,000. They spent $400,000, and I still received 21% of the Democratic vote. So I was very pleased with the outcome, and I still feel that I have quite a bit of name recognition from that race. As far as how I got into the evolved. Last summer, I did a survey. I became involved. Actually, I helped form together with some other Republican and Democratic women. I helped form the Montana Women's Political Caucus, which is a multi-partisan organization. Its purpose is to encourage more women to run for elective office. And I got involved with that group, and I wanted to I did a survey of my own, and I talked to over 200 Montanans last summer. Wanted to see what the awareness was across the state as far as how many people do they know what women are in elective office, and do they feel that there's a need for more women in elective office. And I found that most Montanans, there is a strong sentiment. They said that that the feminine viewpoint is important, and that they thought it was important to have more women in office. So I went on after the survey, and I was considering running as an independent. And I was out gathering signatures on petitions to qualify for the ballot. Well, in that process, that was this last fall, and I talked to actually over a couple of thousand Montanans, and overall there was a real resounding support for a third party. And in fact, they said they wanted another choice. They were very unhappy with the Republicans and Democrats, what they had not been able to accomplish, and they wanted another choice on the ballot. So that's when I first started thinking at that point I was thinking of running as an independent.
So in terms of the nitty-gritty, what was your dissatisfaction with the Democratic Party that kind of was moving you along out of the Democratic Party, then thinking of yourself as an independent, and now here you are in the Reform Party. I mean, clearly you had your own dissatisfactions with and I think I hear you saying that you felt that these dissatisfactions that you had were kind of reflected in the context you had with people in Montana.
Oh yes, and some of those were balancing the budget. I mean, they've struggled. Actually it was Ross Perot that first brought that issue to a real full attention, and I guess I'm frustrated with that. A lot of people are, and I support term limits, and they haven't done anything about term limits either.
So what's this? I mean, what's the status of the Reform Party? I mean, in other words, is the Reform Party officially connected with Perot and the the people we?
Well, it's actually United We Stand America was the party that Ross Perot formed, and this is kind of a takeoff from that party. And really, even though Ross Perot, yes, is certainly behind this effort, it's Americans coming out, and this is the will of the people. They want another party, and so this is a nationwide effort.
I guess I'm saying that it's. Are you a Perot enthusiast per se, or or how would you characterize that?
Well, I am a Reform Party enthusiast,
and
I am fully in support of the reforms that they stand for.
Well, I will say, and I appreciated the material that you sent me, and when I say this, I should say that I have not seen nearly every candidate's position papers, but you sent to me the most extensive and detailed and specific set of position papers that I've had the opportunity to review. So that I found that interesting in itself. I think I'd like you talk about balancing the budget by decreasing the defense budget, especially weapons development. Talk to us about that briefly.
Well, just in that the Cold War is over. I mean, we certainly still have threats around the world, but I guess we need to find some place where we can cut, and to me that's one place that I would think that we could. I mean, this last year I think they approved even more funding for the defense budget for the Pentagon than was asked for. And I guess to me, I just feel that that's one area that they could cut.
Excuse me. Excuse me. I wanted to ask the director if Becky Shaw's sound is okay. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure.
Sure.
And well, I don't know where to begin because, and maybe you have a beginning. Abortion, you support a woman's right to choose.
Yes.
And affirmative action, central to the gains women have made in the workplace. To those who argue it isn't needed now, Becky Shaw says human nature and greed have not changed. And increasing revenue in the federal budget by cutting subsidies to industries such as the tobacco industry, sugar industry, and the shipbuilding industry, which receive undue tax breaks. What would you say is, what motivates you to run for the United States Senate? What is it? I mean, you've got a long list of very specific things, and I'm happy to talk about all of them and as many as we can get to. What is it that's motivating you? Everybody says, well, when you run for public office, you have to have fire in your belly. You're not a cheap huncha in Montana. What's impelled you? What's motivating you? What do you want to accomplish there?
Well, I just feel real strongly about the changes that are needed, the reforms that are needed, and they haven't been able to do it. The balancing the budget, the campaign finance reform. Right now, I think money is tied to the political process so much that it really causes a lot of, it's undue influence on the process. And I think that we need to. People see me as someone who I have an average income, and I think I would like to inspire others to get involved. I mean, this is a democracy, and if you're not happy with what's going on, you have to get involved. And when I jumped into the Senate race in 1994, my overall experience, I loved talking to the people, and I felt it was a good experience. And I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but
do you feel yourself, let's say in your experience in the Democratic Party race from a couple of years ago, and let's say the press, and do you find yourself, do you feel that you're taken seriously, that is to say, in the network of political people and parties, etc., or is that, how does that work? I mean, harking back, I mean, is either of the Republican or the Democratic Party an old boy network? I mean, what's your impression of that?
Well, it certainly is. I think that the Republicans and Democrats both, I believe I am taken seriously. I think when I first started out in 1994, people didn't know what to think about me. But the public, the people that I met on the street just wanted to know what I had to say. And I felt, I still feel that, yeah, it is kind of a good old boy system. In fact, I went to Washington, D.C. last summer, and I wanted to talk to as many women in Congress as I could. And some of the comments were that, we need to have more women. I mean, maybe it is kind of like an old boys club.
You talk about saving money on the defense budget, and recently we see where suddenly $4 billion have turned up or it's been misplaced in the CIA accounting. $4 billion. I mean, this is no one is questioning that there has been a misplaced $4 billion at the CIA. I've been reading and watching the CIA for 45 years, literally, and I don't like the secrecy myself, and I don't like the budget, and I don't like the fact that the budget is secret. Could you tell me what you think about all of that?
Well, I'm for public disclosure, and I believe that the budget should be out in the open. I guess the CIA has its reasons for not having it out in the open. But it's our tax money, and certainly they could fit it into categories anyway without having to release information that would be secret.
Well, you used the illustration of the Cold War. That the Cold War is over, therefore we can see some savings in weapons development. So I guess I would use that as an analogy. If the Cold War is over, do we still need to be spending, as I recall, almost $40 billion a year on CIA and secret policy making and surveillance?
Well, that's a good question. Do we? We need to look at that.
Okay. All right. Hello, you're on the air with Becky Shaw.
Yes, how you doing, Coyle? Good evening.
Good evening.
It's nice that we have these fourth and fifth parties, but the question I have about the Reform Party is twofold. One is that if, in fact, as Ross Perot said, they're only going to endorse Democrats and Republicans, how can we endorse the current system if, in fact, Republicans and Democrats are what got us in this mess in the first place? And second, I guess they're going to be endorsing those candidates probably around Labor Day. Then what makes the Reform Party any different than from typical Democrats and Republicans? Or what will make a difference, I should say, because we do have a third party, a Libertarian Party that will, if they get elected, will do some things that Democrats and Republicans don't seem to be able to accomplish. That's all I have to ask.
Okay.
Well, hang on there, Mike, a minute. Mike's
Well,
with the Libertarian Party.
Sure. in answer to your question about endorsing, the Reform Party will be endorsing Reform Party candidates, and then given that it's such a brand new party, there may not be a lot of Reform Party candidates. They will also look at endorsing Democrats and Republicans that support the reforms that the Reform Party stands for. So, I mean, given the field of candidates, that's what they're looking at doing. And the other part, as far as what was the second part of your question, please?
Well, if Democrats and Republicans, of course, they've been in office, this two-party system is what is destroying this country. And here the Reform Party comes in, and they're just going to pop open the hood to straighten things out a little bit. And I think that's the wrong strategy. I think we need to overhaul certain segments of that system. And if what's going to happen is just an endorsement simply of Democrats and Republicans within the Reform Party, then I don't see that really happening. I just see more of the current stuff continuing on.
Well, thanks.
And I think we need to change that.
Thanks, Mike. I've got another caller. Is that enough?
That's it. Thank you.
Thanks for calling. Hello, you're on the air with Becky Shaw, running for the United States Senate.
Thank you. Becky, a survey was done in 1992 in Congress by Pat Williams, as a matter of fact. And the results of that survey astonished Pat. He found that the number one concern among Montana women was in fact toxic chemicals, and whether that was farm-related or an across-the-board picture, I don't know. But given the effects that we're seeing today and all of the information coming out about pesticides in food and in our lakes and waters, what do you plan on doing in Congress to ensure that our protection from these chemicals is increased and that we have a greater voice?
Well, we certainly do need safeguards against this, and I believe there are some already in place. We'll have to have that. I think it's overseen by the state government largely right now. Of course, the EPA is also involved, but I don't know specifically what specific actions that I would want to take.
Would you be interested in becoming up to speed on this? Would you want to work with folks on this?
I certainly would, yes.
Okay. How do we get in touch with you?
Well, I live in Clancy, and my phone is in the directory. It's under Helena.
Okay, very good.
So,
Thank you.
okay.
Thanks. One of the things, I guess, when you sent along this Reform Party principles of reform, there's a lot of different material in here. Which of these are perhaps the most significant to you? I'll change that around a little bit. For example, under creating a new tax system, require that any future tax increases under a new system be approved by the people in the next federal election in order to impose discipline on spending. And I wanted to put that in the context of something that I've long been interested in, because what's being suggested here would be kind of a national first. It would be a referendum, basically. I mean, and are we in agreement on that?
Well, yeah, that's what it would be. I believe it would be.
Do you think of, we do the referendum process in Montana. Do you think, and I've asked other people this question, what do you think about the referendum and the initiative process and on the federal level, the national level, as well as the ability to recall federal officials in elections?
Well, I'd need to know more about that. As far as with the tax issue here, when I read that, it sounds like to me it sounds like a good idea to have any tax increase voted by the people. However, realistically, are people really going to vote for for a tax increase? I don't know. I suppose if you have enough services that are threatened to be eliminated, yes, you would vote for a tax increase. But as far as you're talking about specific recall of elected officials,
well, I mean, let's just take that. I mean, I guess I'm speaking to you because you're running under the label of Reform Party. So I'm talking about things that are considered reform, principles, or in general. And while we can recall our governor and we can recall any of our state elected officials. We cannot recall United States senators. So.
Well, we should be able to.
And on the initiative level, it seems, as we file initiatives in Montana, I guess the question would be, well, some people would consider it, even in this electronic age, but that is to say, the initiative process on the federal level. In other words, that is to say, supposing somebody said, well, I'm going to go out and collect 40 million signatures to put on the ballot. Should we or should we not have, the CIA, or should we or should we not? What about a national initiative procedure? Does that?
I think it'd be interesting. It really would be.
Talk to us about campaign reform.
Okay. Some of the reforms that the Reform Party are pushing are the campaign finance reform. As you know, it literally, the history of at least for the Senate race, is it takes millions of dollars now to run a Senate race, or so, and that's what the common understanding is anyway. The Reform Party would, they are looking at shortening the election or the campaign cycle so that they would restrict it to 4 months, so that it maybe would cost a little less. They're also would prohibit contributions from PACs.
Political action committees.
Right, which I have pledged to do. Those are some of the things they are doing to try to cut down some of the expense of the campaigns. I guess from what I'm looking at too, I think it would be good to have free time from the broadcast stations and the public stations, TV stations and radio, and just so that the candidates can have some. That's what's so expensive is the paid media.
Well, I want to pursue that because on the national level, all of the major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, and the public broadcasting system, PBS, as well, have now signed on to free presidential campaign time, in this fall, right? So my question to you is this: it has not been questioned that the greater amount of money that gets spent on campaigning is spent on state races, right? Whether they're, for federal office, in the state. In other words, more campaign money gets spent on television and radio and print on the state level than it does by the presidential candidates, right? And so I guess my question is, do you see a time when, and you have a primary opponent, retired railroader from Livingston, Montana, Webb Sullivan, but do you see a time when you candidates and then those of you who come out of the primary June 4th as the winners of your respective primaries, do you see on that, with that national model in mind of the networks having said, okay, it's time for us to clean up our act, we're going to distribute some free time to you people, when are the candidates and the runners for office in Montana going to be in contact with the commercial and public broadcasting industry in the state of Montana to follow the national lead?
Very soon, I would hope. And I would hope that we would have a united effort to
because to me, that's if we're talking about charity begins at home. How much money have you got in your campaign account?
I have under $5,000.
Right, and so you'll worry about the rest of it later. Is that your?
Right. Well, I hope to raise. I think I need a minimum of at least $100,000 to win, because I have to place some paid media advertising. But I would want to raise as much as $400,000.
So if you come out of the primary the victor on the Reform Party ticket, you're looking to raise between $100,000 and $400,000.
Yes.
Okay. And you expect to do, in other words, and by dint of your platform, this would all be in state?
It doesn't. Well, I have actually. I think that we should be able to accept contributions from people like former Montanans,
Right.
people that lived here and
Right.
they now live out of state.
Right.
But they would certainly all be from, most of them would be from Montanans that live here now. And they would certainly all be from individual contributions. There would be no PAC money.
And no PAC money, and so that would mean, you know, just straight ahead. Would that mean that you, for example, you could still get a contribution from, according to your own plans? I mean, in other words, could a union, or would that
No.
be, you know? So
No, you couldn't.
In terms of who you're taking from, or want some help from.
It would just be from an
individuals or
individuals.
families or
Yes.
things like that.
Yes.
And how do you expect to? Are you going to be traveling a lot if you win this nomination?
Well, I certainly will be. Yeah, traveling
And
around the state.
here's a toughie, I guess. What do you think, both yourself and professional colleagues and friends, what do you see as perhaps your greatest strengths, and what do you see as things that people or yourself think that you could or wish that you were better at?
Well, my strengths, I guess, are I can listen. I'm a good listener, and I like to talk to people. I enjoy that. And when I was out campaigning before in '94, I went to large towns and small towns and met with people one-on-one, a lot of business owners. And my strengths are just, you know, talking one-on-one with a person and gaining understanding of what their concerns are. I see that as a strength. As far as weaknesses, maybe, you know, I don't know, as far as it costs so much money to have all these media ads, maybe I won't have as many media ads, the paid advertising, you know, as my opponents will.
Hello, if you got a question or comment?
I think you need to show a little more skin.
Thanks. Nasty. Election reform. You want to? That's an interesting one. You think that we should vote on Saturdays and Sundays, so working people can get to the polls?
Right. So every vote counts, and also they're looking at eliminating the electoral process, electoral college process.
Electoral college.
Yeah,
right.
in the presidential.
It's a direct popular vote.
Right.
You know, so
Right.
it would be just a grand total.
Right.
Grand total across the country.
Mhm.
And your working career. I mean, you've kind of you've been a single mom a long time.
Yeah, for about 8 years, I guess. Now. And I have 2 sons, and my oldest is 21. He is a student at MSU, but he's an exchange student this year in Japan. And he got a scholarship, and so he's over there studying Japanese language right now. He helped me with my campaign in '94, and he's going to be coming home in August, and he'll help me again. My youngest son is, he's 17, he's going to be graduating from high school this weekend, and he will go on to the University of Montana. So those are my 2 sons. I'm very proud of them, and they're both very supportive of me, and they both help me, travel with me.
And your job now is up in Helena working on student loan.
I'm a student loan officer, yes. I'm with the Montana Guaranteed Student Loan Program, and we're under the Commissioner of Higher Education.
And you do their what?
Well, actually, I'm a counselor and investigator, and we help people that have defaulted loans. I help them bring their loans back into good grace, you know, and help. We have a lot of programs to help people.
Do people think you give them a hard time?
Well, I don't know. I don't. I just tell them what's there for them, and if they want to take advantage of it, they're welcome to.
I noticed though that there's somewhere in your literature you talk about you know that the federal loan program, and correct me if I'm misreading this, because it came up, I think, in the past year where the Clinton administration wanted to convert the student loan program into the direct governmental loan. Am I correct? You think it should stay in the private sector? Is that
I do.
correct?
I do, just simply because, well, there's a lot of different reasons, but, you know, really to simplify it, you know, I don't want to be calling a national servicer if I have a question about my student loan. I'd rather call a state agency. That's what's going to happen if the direct loan program, you know, would take over completely, you would have it all done, this would all be done by national servicers. So someone in Montana would have to call someone maybe in New York or somewhere, and it may be, I just think that there's going to be would be less service, really. You have to think of how this is going to affect the student.
How do you have fun?
How do I have fun?
Yeah.
Well, I love to hike and jog, and I live up in the mountains outside of Helena, so it's a beautiful area to live in, and I like to get outside. I also like to fly fish. My father taught me how to fly fish, and I don't get to do it very often, but I like to get out and do a little bit of that.
And are you much of a reader?
Yes, I enjoy reading too.
What anything special? Any genre, or you can fess up?
You know, I've been so busy lately that all I've been reading are newspapers and nothing really fun.
Do you think that the Montana press in general, when it comes to reporting, let's say, campaigns and political processes, is there room? I mean, do Montana people now, as it stands, get enough information about who campaigners are and what they're doing and what they're about?
Oh, not really. It's very limited. And I think that, well, I remember that thinking myself, before I ever became a candidate, how am I going to pick who I'm going to vote for? And it seems like there's very selective information presented.
And you accuse, or it might be a softer word, but you point the finger at Senator Max Baucus for equivocating on the Bosnia peacekeeping mission, but that is something that you supported. Is that something that you felt particularly strongly about?
Well, it was a difficult question, but given the fact that all three of the warring parties, the leaders of those parties, asked for this, they all had agreed to a treaty, and then they asked for the United States to help. I think that's a situation where we had to get involved in the atrocities that were happening over there. I just feel that, and then, I mean, the troops were going. That's all there was, and if they're going to be there, you have to support them. I mean, the president had decided to do it, and he did.
And you felt that Baucus equivocated on this? How did
well,
that?
He didn't say either way. He just kind of, wouldn't make a real firm statement one way or the other.
I'm just looking for a caller. Hello, you're on the air. We lost him. They'll call back, I hope. Call us back, please. Have you thought about, in other words, when you think about the possibilities of being in the United States Senate, have you thought at all about what committee kind of work you would, where do you think that you could serve? There's a lot of committees.
Sure. Environment, I'm interested in the environment, and labor.
Do you consider yourself a pro-labor person, or are you using that word in a broader sense?
Kind of a broad sense, yeah.
Have you been a member of a union in your life?
I was, when I worked for local government. That was some time ago.
I wanted to on gun control, you oppose any further gun control measures.
Yes.
You do support the 5-day waiting period prior to purchasing a handgun, and you also support the ban on the sale of assault weapons.
Yes.
You're opposed to a flat tax because, to quote you, it's a scheme to benefit the rich. And talk to us about lobbying. I'm sorry, you were about to say something.
Well, just with the flat tax, I guess I would, really question any. I mean, this tax was. Look at, Forbes. He based his whole campaign, or a lot of his campaign, on this flat tax. And to me, when a multimillionaire wants to push this tax so much, I would really question how it's going to affect the average person.
You mentioned also your interest in the environment, and I noticed in your literature that you sent along that you had gone to one of the town meetings or hearings up in Lincoln about the 7-Up peat mine.
I did.
And
actually, that meeting was in Helena, but
okay.
It was.
And then you refer also to that proposed mine now down near Yellowstone Park, the big one. But you do refer to. Could you tell us about where you see this environment? I'm not quoting you, but environmentally friendly mining, like near your.
Well, for example, in Jefferson County, where I reside, we have 2 mines that have brought in a lot of revenue, a lot of tax revenue, to the local government, and of course that eases the burden on the individual taxpayer. But they've been good neighbors. Pegasus Gold, which is very close to where I live, and they've helped the community. They have, of course, now the Hard Rock Mining Board. They have these impacts where the mining company actually pays for the social and economic impacts to the community when they move in, and they've been good neighbors. I think if the mines, if they follow the rules and regulations that they must go by. I think that some mining is fine. We have to have these metals, and we need to have the product. We also need to have jobs.
You mentioned another mine down near Yellowstone Park, and you were specific about the process that they used, and it was unfamiliar to me. Could you touch on that?
Well, just that I know that it's environmentally sound, and that particular mine was not the one by Yellowstone. That was the one by, that was the one by Gardner. Yes. And that's really, I'm not going to go into the details of the process because I'm really.
But so how did you come to your conclusion that that
I had talked to someone who had thorough understanding of the process and explained it to me in detail, and so and just from that.
You talk in your material about the wilderness, your dissatisfaction with the fact that we have yet, to write a wilderness bill that, for Montana, that we've been squabbling about this on the federal delegation level for. I'll be right there with you, caller. And you suggest that we deal with the wilderness problem, or that this is an alternative you present, one section at a time, and to do it piecemeal. Some might say, and some have said in the past, that is to say, pro-conservationists, that by doing it piecemeal, that we would have a struggle every time, and not just a 16-year-long struggle. So in that context.
Well, that was a suggestion that I put out, just because we've had so much trouble. I mean, look at how many years they've struggled over a bill, and that was just a suggestion that possibly we have established other wilderness areas that way, and so I thought maybe.
So you're throwing that out as a talking point. Yeah. If we can't have the whole pie, you want to consider, starting to cut it up now. Yeah. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to respond to Ms. Shaw's statement about the state agencies, the environmental agencies, being there to protect us. That's certainly true in theory, but for example, in the real world, we have the case of Stone Container. I'm involved in the citizens lawsuit. We brought suit against Stone Container for literally thousands of alleged violations over just a 5-year period. The agencies in Stone's ownership of that mill never levied a single dollar in fines. We have the legislative auditors' reports of the Water Quality Bureau, the Air Quality Division, very critical of their enforcement role. We have the Helena Independent Records expose of the Water Quality Bureau's atrocious enforcement record, and just want to see if Ms. Shaw has any comment to that. I'll hang up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, certainly yes, I am aware of some of those violations and really the water quality problems we've had with the enforcement. Yeah, we need to improve it. We need to improve it. But apparently, as I understand it, some of that was tied to lack of funding as well. And we have to look and see what's causing this. And yes, I know that there are problems. I'm not saying that it's a perfect system by any means.
And you support the line item veto of the president. I believe he has that.
Yes,
now,
he does.
Right? And Thank you for your patience while I scan my notes. You know, you talk about NAFTA. Can you say what NAFTA is? North American Free Trade Agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
You believe it's hurt Montana jobs and agricultural sales, and you say NAFTA should be revisited to review its progress. You talk about dumping of cheap timber, flooding the market, causing lower prices for those products, lost jobs. You want to require further negotiation of some provisions of the NAFTA agreement and to provide for withdrawal from NAFTA unless certain conditions are met. NAFTA is one of those things which I have this grasp on it and the rest of it is arcane.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I mean, what does it mean to us in Montana, if you could give us an example?
well, an example, I guess, would be the grain farmers, you know, as far as there was a surplus of grain coming over from Canada.
We'll be right with you, caller. Thank you for waiting.
And, you know, I guess from what I can see, NAFTA, the overall purpose of was to bring everyone up and to create more jobs and an evening out between the countries of the trade. And there's going to be some problems in the meantime because when everything is adjusting, I think that many times the overall purpose of the law is well thought out and it's a very noble goal, but in reality, the way things work out and then the way they affect people could be something different entirely. So I just think it's a good idea to revisit it quite often to see what's actually happening.
And are you supporting this increase in the minimum wage?
Yes.
And you going back to the wilderness, and and we covered that. You know, your possible talking point of doing one area at a time, and you're frank here, and I think that's great. I do not have a ready answer to the number of acres to designate or the details of release language for lands that are not set aside. But you talk about all Americans owning the federal lands in question. Have you, in your life in Montana, on this show and in other forums, we've talked about the checkerboard ownership pattern, the land grant Act of the 1860s, which conveyed an area the size of Connecticut to the railroads and their inheritors until this day, and that their ownership, that checkerboard pattern of ownership that runs through so much of Montana, is in many people's eyes extremely divisive, even in settling the wilderness issue. Have you heard of how would you respond to the idea that it's time, if you talk about revisiting NAFTA, that we revisit the land grant acts on the federal level? Because if people are saying we want more of public lands under our control, I mean, is that something that should be revisited?
Yeah, it sounds like it really should be.
I think we've got a call. Who was on first, line 1? Hello, you're on the air with Becky Shaw.
Hello, this is Guido.
You got a question or a comment for this candidate for the United States Senate?
Yes, I do. I like this NAFTA thing, because when I pick the cherries, it gives me lots of money, huh? I'm a Mexican, huh?
Thanks for calling in. Hello, you're on the air.
Wow, that was quite the call you just had. Anyways, I'm a little more civilized, and I was going to ask what you thought about the flat tax. And can you explain it to me a little more?
Well, overall, it's just they were proposing a flat tax that would be a flat rate on all citizens, except I believe they were exempting certain people that had an income of less than so much per year, and I don't really know what that cutoff was.
Hey, what do you guys think about the Freeman scandal?
Well, to me, that is it's an incident that people are unhappy. It's kind of a sign of the times in a way, and I think that it's an extreme example. They're definitely a group of extremists, and I don't know. I'm not sure what they're going to do. I mean, they've been waiting and waiting, and it's you know, everyone's watching to see what's going to happen. I just hope that it doesn't end violently.
Well, yeah. But, geez, I just forgot what the...
That's fine, go with it.
What's that?
I said, that's fine, go with it.
Oh, I can't quite hear you. My phone's going dead again.
Oh. I said, do you have another question or comment?
Oh, yeah, I was thinking, what do you think about the public schools? Do you agree with them or not?
Well, as far as what, is there a particular issue or?
Would you send your son to a private school or a public school?
Well, both of my sons attended public schools.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And are you happy with them?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's good. And, well, geez, I think that's about all I wanted to talk to you about.
Hey, thanks for calling in.
Hey, thanks for having me call.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello, you're on the air.
Hello, this is Guido. Now, are you like a racist against us Mexicans or what, you know? You hang up on me and stuff.
You got another comment?
Oh, yes, this NAFTA thing, you know? I like it. Huh?
Okay, that sounds good. We've got another caller on line two, I believe. Hello?
Yes, I'd like to pursue Becky's ideas about the flat tax. And I guess my question has to do with what is wrong with everybody paying the same rate? Why shouldn't one person pay a higher rate just because they make more money? Would you give me some explanation of that?
Well, from what I understand of the flat tax, individuals who made a lot of money, say for example, over $200,000 a year, would pay considerably less taxes with a flat rate than they do now. And given the fact that we're trying to balance the budget, I don't know how we can, you know, I think that's conflicting there, right there. That's one reason that I don't agree with the flat tax.
But why is it conflicting that you pay less tax?
Because
What's the conflict?
the conflict is with the major goal of balancing the budget. With less revenue, then they have to cut even more than, you know, they have to cut programs.
Don't you understand, have you ever understood the notion that the less taxation that you have, the more taxes that the federal government gets? Because it produces jobs, it expands the economy. Don't you believe in that? I don't believe you do.
Well, if I might just comment on a couple of things. It's clear that Becky Shaw opposes the flat tax, you know, very strongly, and I think it would be a good idea. I mean, I'm not someone who can explain the flat tax in all its complexities. I'd like to see a show produced on the flat tax or tax reform by, you know, people who, you know, are well informed about it. I think that might be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I find it interesting that the people of Montana get more federal taxes back than they pay, and I see very few Montanans who say that that's a bad thing and that they want that to change. Anyway, go ahead, caller.
No, that was really what I wanted to talk about. Is the flat tax. It's the best idea that's just hit this country in many, many years. And if you really want an expanding economy, all you got to do is reduce tax rates.
Well, I guess in terms of you know, your feelings on it, it's the Republican Party or the voters in the Republican Party primaries seem to have, at least to one degree, you know, not expressed an endorsement. I mean, you know, there was certainly a goodly percentage of votes for Steve Forbes in some states, but all around it seemed like the Forbes didn't get much clear Republican support for the flat tax. I know it's still alive in the Congress, but you know, it would be good to see an extensive and lengthy program on tax reform, and I would encourage you or your colleagues to come down and use the public access facility at Missoula Community Access Television, because it's available for everyone in the city of Missoula to make use of. So I appreciate your call.
Thanks for taking the call, Becky.
You bet. You go. What do you want to talk about?
Well, let's see. We have covered a lot of materials and a lot of issues. I guess I could talk a little bit about women.
All right.
I mentioned before, I went to Washington, D.C. Actually, I went to Nashville for a National Women's Political Caucus meeting, and I thought since I was that far east, I would go to Washington, D.C. as well. And I wanted to talk to as many women in Congress and their staffs to see what do women bring to the system, and do we need more women in elective office. Pat Williams was one of the first that I talked to, and he told me, absolutely, Becky, Congress will not change until more women are elected to it. And he said his reasoning was that he felt that women tended to have fewer ties to business and professional associations than men. And they also had they reasoned differently than men. And he just felt that those ties sometimes can keep a person from voting according to their conscience and in the best interest of their constituents when they have real strong ties here and there to business and professional associations. I thought that was an interesting perspective.
Which women in Congress are you especially struck by in terms of admiration or respect?
Well, I met with Pat Schroeder, and she was very encouraging. She was delighted with at that point she had thought I was considering running for the U.S. Senate, and was very encouraging. She just very briefly told me that I needed to set up a network of support and get started. But she was fun to meet with. I also met with Patty Murray, Democrat from the state of Washington. I was inspired by her race because she was underspent. She was outspent by like 3 to 1 when she ran, and she ran against an incumbent congressman. She told me her average campaign contribution was $40. That she started out early and met with had coffees, informal coffees, and that the press largely ignored her for many, many months. And of course, she went on to win. I met with Barbara Boxer from California. She told me, she says, Becky, tell the people in Montana that, remember the TV show 8 is enough? 8 women is not enough in the U.S. Senate.
Now I have to pull this. I have to ask you this. Now, were these conversations with them before or after you filed as a Reform Party candidate?
Oh, before, definitely.
Okay, when you were talking to them.
Yeah, definitely before.
But I'm sure I think that they are generally encouraging of women in public life. Yeah. Speaking of that, are you going to either now or if you win the primary, will you be seeking any support from those women's, like Emily's List, things like that, where it's, money set aside specifically for female candidates from all over the country?
Well, I won't be because of my pledge not to accept PAC money. But those organizations are there. Emily's List is
So that's a PAC?
It's a PAC.
Yeah, okay.
And it's for Democrat. They tend to give to Democratic women.
Yeah, I don't think they're exclusive to Democrats.
But they do. Well, I'm not sure. I guess I need to look at.
Well, I was just trying to help you find some money.
But you do, certainly look for endorsements and help and a way of networking, and that's one thing that the Montana Women's Political Caucus does.
When you have these political caucuses, I mean, do you talk about using computer technology to campaign at all? Does this come up?
Yes, it does.
As strategy?
It does. It's just that in that there's information there for you. There's a way to connect, over the internet. Yeah. Yes.
So but specifically, have you envisioned, any kind of interneting work that would benefit a campaign in Montana, or?
I haven't myself, but I understand that it is out there. I do have access to some of the internet through my office. And but I don't know. I haven't really gotten into it. But the potential is there, certainly.
You've lived in and around Helena for many years now, and on balance, how are women doing in positions of policy-making authority in state government?
Well, they are progressing. They're making progress. There's in our state legislature, the percentage of women is growing. And I've forgotten the percentage. But it is growing. That we have more women than ever before in.
You mean
in
the legislature itself?
That's what I meant. Yes. And however, you know, really in the statewide elective offices, there's only just a few.
Nancy Keenan.
There's just a few.
Right.
Yeah.
Only two.
And the
Only
Supreme
two
Court,
district
we have,
women judges.
well, and we have Carla Gray.
Right.
In
And
the Supreme
on the
Court.
Supreme Court.
So.
But you worked, you know, in and around state government itself. So I'm talking about like administrative and
Okay.
programs and
Well-
things like that. Or how are women doing in that
I think they're doing
regard?
very well.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're advancing.
And what do you think of? What do you think of? I mean, we have increasingly, you know, these social, cultural battles and arguments over many things. Not only do we have, you know, the right to life versus, you know, pro-privacy, which means pro-abortion rights. Now we have, you know, the right to die issue, which has come up in the Ninth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals, in which the Court of Appeals is, you know, getting involved in that issue. I guess the question is, the largest question is sometimes the government, whether on the federal or the state level, is seen as a friendly and positive intervener in our lives, and at other times it is not. And this seems to be one of the that we do seem to be in culture wars around the country. And it involves many different facets of the population, all of us probably to one degree or another, on many different grounds. And so what do you think about these privacy issues? I mean, clearly you're you know, pro-privacy and support the women's right to choose. That's a privacy issue. Here's another issue then. We have the right to die. People want to say, when it's my time, I want to be able to go out lawfully. Have you thought about that one?
I have. And, you know, I tend to agree that people should have that right if it's, you know,
And Supreme Court decision last week involving 6-3 decision, majority decision, overturning the Colorado state initiative having to do with gays, discrimination there. And the Supreme Court found in favor of those that class of citizens, gay citizens, lesbian citizens, who believed that initiative had taken away, you know, fundamental rights there. Are you a supporter of the where do you come in on that spectrum?
well, yeah, I think that we're all, you know, should be equal, and if there's discrimination against gays, then that needs to be eliminated.
I don't know if we have a call or not. It looks like someone's talking on there. What's the? Have you traveled much?
Well, you know, this time I haven't, because I've been working.
In your life, have you traveled?
Oh, sure, yeah,
Yeah?
I have. Not extensively, but yes, I've traveled. You know, I've been down to Mexico a few times, and I've been up into Canada and around the U.S. I really haven't spent a lot of time on the East Coast, but I have been. My father was from the Deep South, from Louisiana, and my mother is from Montana. But yeah, I've traveled to both areas.
What do you think of the shape that the railroads are in, both in the state of Montana and on the national level? And do you see any opportunity for, or opportunity, need, necessity for either a greater federal and/or state investment in the railroad infrastructure? Have you thought about the railroads?
You know, I haven't. I haven't really.
Partly I asked that question in the context of, you know, our recent train derailment and spillage of chlorine gas, in which, you know, the community of Alberton had to be evacuated for 2 weeks. And there, again, it's over the last decade, I would say that many of us have seen a greater a lessening of federal and state oversight of railroads and railroad safety issues. So that was the way I was framing that question. Well, all right, so let's say you get this Reform Party nomination and you're running for the United States Senate and you've got somewhere between $100,000 and $400,000. And you're out on the campaign trail and you're at a rally, and one of the people at the rally asks you, you want to go to Washington for a maximum of 2 terms because you want to respect term limits yourself. You're a term limit supporter. And someone calls out from the crowd and said, Becky, okay, we all live here in Montana. You want to go to Washington and represent me. What is the one piece of legislation that you believe is important not only to the nation but to Montana that you want to tackle, that you want to either invent or work on, something that's been pending maybe for years, or some new initiative that you want to,
What I see is the most important right now is balancing the budget. And I guess I don't know if that's considered one piece of legislation, but it's certainly something that I would, when you look at how far it's gone, I mean, in 1974, I worry about, I have 2 sons, and I worry about their future, and I worry about the future of this country. In 1974, when my oldest son was born, that was the year that Max Baucus first went to Congress. And at that time, the budget was, the deficit was around $500 billion at that point, and then it just, it kept growing. In 1988, when my youngest son was 10 years old, I worked I was finishing up my college degree, and I was an intern at Max Baucus's field office. And at that point, the debt is growing and growing, and it's now, I mean, as of April, it was up to $5,146,356,000,000, and it's growing and growing. And when are we going to do something about it? To me, it's out of, and that would be the burning issue that I would want to do.
Well, the one thing that then the one area, and I think there are a couple of others, but you give prominence to helping balance the budget by cutting the defense budget. Okay, so that's the.
Well, and certainly there's probably all kinds of other areas that we can cut too.
But what do you want to keep in the budget? What are your priorities? What should our priorities in Montana be? That is to say, in terms of it's not so much, I mean, yes, it is what you want to cut out of a budget, but what do we want to hold on to? I'm thinking of, I do take that course and watch other nations around the world that, run in cycles. I mean, is it important to invest in our infrastructure? Railroads, the environment, highways, schools, or what have you. Therefore, okay, you've said we can cut the defense budget. What do we hang on to? What do Montanans want to hang on to? Do Montana farmers still want their crop subsidies? Does the mining industry still only want to pay, $5 per, I forget what the specific formula is, but some very, absurd amount, low amount of money to pay for the royalty or the patent that allows them to mine whatever multi-billion-dollar fortune is beneath there. That's a very extended observation and what have you, but I guess to me, balancing the budget, it is like balancing the budget at home. It's like, well, I've got to have food, I've got to have this, I've got to have that. What do we hold on to?
Well, that's a good question. It's very complex, of course, but there's so many programs that I feel that we can't really touch. I mean, one of those is Social Security.
Although you would raise the age of eligibility?
Yes, I would raise the age of eligibility. I think we have to do something.
What is it now? 60?
It depends on when you were born, the year you were born. But that's one program that we have to protect, and certainly, we have to take care of our senior citizens. The Medicare, and we have to take a look. Just be very careful before you start slashing things. I do think there's a lot of fraud, from what I understand, in the program, but don't cut benefits to the people that really need those benefits. And by eliminating fraud, then perhaps we can save a lot of money. Overall, but there are other programs too. In Montana, certainly no one ever wants to give. No one wants to give up. However, with the Farm Bill, the farmers that I've talked to, in fact, I have in my own family, I have some wheat farmers that are outside of Billings, and they feel a certain resentment as far as having been dependent on the government. And they would, I think a lot of farmers would like to be more independent. They would want to diversify, and it's a difficult thing for them to do without the support of the government, but maybe we need to. That's a step in the right direction. I don't know.
This is a little bit again in some kind of broad context because I've been talking to so many candidates over the last 7 weeks, and some of them for statewide office as well as federal office. But I've pretty much tried to ask everyone this question about their observations about life between the Anglos, the white community, and the minority community in Montana, which I, as an individual citizen, sometimes find to be more generally invisible than not, and that we have problems that go ignored or very quietly. That it's a perception of mine that there isn't an acknowledgement in Montana that we do have some very serious and wide gaps in terms of our lack of knowledge, understanding of the treaty nations that are here. And I'm wondering what your take on that was, and then putting that in a federal context. If you were in the United States Senate, what have you thought about the Indian question? And
Sure.
and go ahead.
I certainly have, and we can look at some of the different tribes in the state of Montana, and some are, they all have. I think they're growing, and they're in their sovereignty, the idea of sovereignty, and then that they want to govern themselves. And they need to have, though, some of the tribes are better off than others. I know up by the Salish Kootenai are very very rich, and they have a lot of money, and they are progressive. They have their own college up there, and they need to overall they need to try to raise their economy somehow. And I know they've they've talked about bringing gaming into the reservations and that kind of thing, but and there's the pros and cons for that. But overall, yes, I think that we do need to have more education about what's going on there, and I do think, though, that they are increasing their ability to they actually have their own culture, group culture, and but they are separated, really. So I don't know. And as far as if I'm a U.S. senator, we need to look at those people's problems as well, as everyone else's, and how they fit in with each other. I'm not sure.
Well, I guess the BIA or how serious? I guess one way of asking it would, and maybe I'm a romantic realist, but when I hear the word sovereignty, and when I hear the word nation, and when I hear the word treaty, I take those words literally, and I think that this is another part, let's say, of some culture wars around the country where let's say in our own home state of Montana, people will say those words or say them and not like them, or not take them literally. That there is not there isn't the respect for sovereignty or nation status. It's just not to be believed.
I think that's increasing, though. There is more respect for their sovereignty.
I was thinking too about an historical event, and again one that I posed before, but in 1911 the U.S. Senate and the House passed a law which capped the membership of the United States House of Representatives at its present number. Before that time, generally after every census, according to the Constitution, the House expanded if there was a significant shift in the population, and everything would get redivided up again, and there would be. In 1911, they decided by statute we'll just cap our membership of the House, and the Senate went along with this. In other major democracies around the world, both in Asia and in Europe, the level of representation for the lower houses, let's say the English Parliament or Germany or France, Italy, Japan, New Zealand, that your constituencies are much smaller. That is to say, whether you have 80,000 in the constituency that you represent. I ask you this because you're a reformer and you're from a reform party. Do you think that an expansion of the House of Representatives should be considered as to the benefits or lack thereof it might bring?
I would think that it should be considered, just given the fact that I know for Montana, you know, we have one lone congressperson, and it's very difficult for that person to cover the entire state of Montana. You know, even though we have a smaller population here, we have great expanses of land, and we certainly do have nearly the population level that would require 2 representatives, and certainly that we're looking at possibly having 2 again after the next census. But yeah, I think that should be considered.
And of course, and you're in Montana. How do you feel? Let's say, especially because now you're on a third party ticket, Reform Party ticket. How have you picked up any sense at all of that you will have some support from women? In other words, most women in Montana, if they're independent or they're a Democrat or they're a Republican. Do you see any support coming your way? People willing to cross, pick, because if they can't vote in both primaries, right? I mean, they can't vote Democrat or they can't vote Republican and vote for you. So some of the traditionalists will, and then of course that will be even in a greater level in November. Well, hello, you're on the air.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. I got a question about the prison systems. I've had some my name's Evan Disney. I've had some recent experiences regarding that, the security, because I was in a shower one time, I dropped the soap and boom, it was all over.
All right, thank you. That's public access. Now, we need, if you want to call back with a serious question for a person who I want to thank for, as I have thanked other candidates, I've tried to anyway, thank you for running for public office. It's not easy, I think, even to make the decision to take a large chunk out of your life, and I think it's important, and so I extend my own appreciation to all of you who have decided to take it on.
Thank you.
And we've got a few minutes left.
Well, let me touch on what you had mentioned before we have the last call.
Yeah.
Polls show that 3 out of every 5 new Reform Party members are Democrats, and so I thought that was interesting. As far as voting for me in the primary, yes, when you go to the polling place, you will be given 3 ballots, and you will, if you vote for the Reform Party ticket, you'll have to forego voting in those other races. But this is a vote for change, and to me, it's an opportunity for the voters to say, yes, we want another choice, and I think it's exciting that we're having this primary.
And do you have a campaign manager, or are you the main engine here?
Actually, I'm actually the main, I don't have a campaign manager. I do my own scheduling. When people call from, these big shot reporters call from New York or Washington, can I talk to your press secretary? That's me.
Do you have you gotten calls from the national press?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
I have,
Oh, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
But, no, I do that, and then, of course, I do have a treasurer, and I do have a lot of volunteers. I have a lot of volunteers.
And just network of friends and political
and people
supporters.
that I've come across that said, I want to help you, people all over the state.
So, but if you win this nomination on your party line, the Reform Party, then you have to shift gears, right? I mean, because $100,000 even at a bottom line is a lot of money. So it's how do you do that? How do you raise $100,000?
Well,
mailings?
Yeah, direct mailing, calling people. Pretty much, that's it.
What do you think of surveys and polls?
Well, before in 1994 when I ran in the Democratic primary, 10 days before the election, a poll showed that I would receive 9% of the vote, and I received 21% of the vote. 10 days later. I guess I don't know. It's even if you have a big sample, it's hard to predict the future. It's hard to predict the outcome of an election, and in a way, polls can sometimes influence the way people think about who's going to be a winner. And some people might say, well, I don't want to vote for that person because I don't think they're going to win. And so I would hope that, you have to be careful with polls that they won't influence the voters, although I think that they do.
And so is your treasurer, is that in effect also a fundraiser job as well?
No, more or less just keeping the money and keeping track of it all.
Right,
So.
right. And are you gonna do anything like ride the train, or are you planning any surprises for your?
Well, I don't know. It wouldn't be a surprise if I told you. No, I don't know. I don't know at this point. But I am
Okay.
going to take a leave of absence from my job, and I'm going to be doing as much traveling as I can and meeting with as many people as I can all over the state.
Right. And I wanted to ask you. You talked about lobbyists, both domestic. Well, we've got a question. I always defer to question one, line one. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, I'm just curious as to why defense cuts and Social Security are always the first two cuts that people refer to. And secondly, if you were to raise the age of eligibility to Social Security, what age would you raise it to? And thirdly, what would happen to the people if they were to cut the Social Security system for the people that have paid in 10, 20, 30 years, and they were to cut it? What kind of reimbursement would these people get that have paid in for this length of time?
Well, I think you may have misunderstood me. I was not supporting any cuts to Social Security. I don't. I think that we need to protect that program. And I did mention raising the age of eligibility just because they're running out. They're looking at running out of money, and so we need to do something. And I don't know. I don't have a specific age for you. I don't know at this point.
You got a follow-up question or comment?
Well, my understanding was at a recent class that I had taken that Social Security was one of the programs that was actually working for itself, that they were actually taking money from Social Security, the interest from Social Security, and applying it to the national deficit, or the national debt, that they were taking that money. But I was curious, when you mentioned defense cuts, why is it always people wanting to cut the defense, our national defense? Why do you want to take cuts from there? Because it always seems to be more expensive to cut that than it would be to maintain it at the present level.
So you're saying it would be more expensive to cut it than maintain it at the present level?
Yes.
In what way would that? How would that happen?
Well, when you cut 100,000 personnel, then there's 100,000 people that are unemployed.
Good point.
That they're unemployed, they're not working, they're drawing unemployment. You're cutting jobs, so these people have to search elsewhere, which brings a bigger. When you cut defense jobs, you're also cutting the people who support the defense. The contractors like the shipbuilders, the tank builders, the airplane manufacturer, any more good manufacturers. When you cut from defense, you cut from not one department, but you cut from hundreds of areas. So why would you want to cut defense when one small cut there would mean massive amounts of, or larger amounts of unemployment because of unemployability?
Well, and let me kind of chime in with you, because I heard a couple of familiar notes there, and put it in a context of this whole quarrel that we have about, the nation, about balancing the budget. Is a perfectly balanced checkbook the ideal thing here? Or, as this caller is asking, I believe, if you cut defense, there will be a number of people out of work. Does the U.S. government become, like a lot of corporations, downsizers, and all of a sudden there's a lot of people out of work? Therefore, I guess I would add, caller, to your question, is a way of balancing the budget, instead of forcing people out of work and onto unemployment lines and welfare, but taking a savings here and reinvesting it in a situation or a place where those people who were, let's say, out of the defense circuit could be gainfully employed.
Well, I guess, you know, as far as why I would cut defense, I don't have a specific reason other than the Cold War is over, and I understand your argument about, you know, all those people that would be no longer in the military would be looking for work, and certainly they'd have to be absorbed into our system. I don't know, I do have one example that I heard about, that there was an example of a city where a large base was closed in California, and it was predicted that, you know, it would be doom and gloom. However, that community has turned around, and there have been, you know, other types of businesses booming, and it's not a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
It recovered very well, and it's still certainly recovering, and there were some serious layoffs. But you have to look on the bright side. I mean, we do have to cut somewhere if we're going to balance the budget.
The one
Excuse
thing
me, caller. I think somebody just. We do have a caller on line 2 waiting. So if you could, you know, finish up with another comment or question, and then we'll go to line 2.
Well, just one last.
You bet. You bet.
One last comment that I'd have is that the one thing that I've seen, like, the government invest in with defense, and this is the only thing that I could see where I would hold the government responsible, is when they wanted to invest in, like, the A-2 stealth bomber, and they invest $3 trillion into the plane, then scrap the project. I just would think that there should be some government accountability there to spend $3 trillion and then say, oh, we're not going to go ahead with the project.
That's
Anyway.
a good point.
It's I've read those stories myself. It's a good point. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello. Thanks for waiting. You're on the air.
Why, hello there, my good man.
All right.
I have a question on the flat tax. Let me just start off by saying that I feel it's very unfair to tax women because of their butt size, because it's really an inherited thing.
Thank you. That's public access television. Have you ever experienced it before?
Yeah.
There's a few people out there that are really kind of, they should be on television instead of at home calling in. Becky, we're just about out of time. There's so much of your program that I think we have covered a goodly part of it. You talked about, talk to us about your position on lobbying, which seemed, that seemed pretty extensive, because according to the Reform Party literature, prohibit former elected and appointed officials from ever taking money from foreign governments or foreign interests, and prohibit any former federal employees, including elected officials, from ever working as a foreign lobbyist. I certainly, I mean, it's nothing that has to be explained in particular. I guess the only, sometimes I can be a purist and say, all right, well, why don't we give that a whirl? On the other hand, I have, let's say I'm working, I mean, as we see all the time, as we see it in Montana, we see the revolving door, government, university system, private industry, or what have you. Mm-hmm. So there's always a revolving door. Sometimes it seems we benefit from some people who walk through those doors. Meaning they've been in government and then they go and they're representing, the Montana school boards, or, and then we see it, of course, on the federal level. But as I read that, and I thought, well, I talking about lobbying, I said, well, what if I was working for the federal government, let's say, on your staff in Washington, D.C., and then I was through with that job, and let's say I'd had, a significant job in Washington for the federal government. And I had also a special interest in the Republic of Ireland and in trying to improve life in Ireland, whether politically and economically. And so that's the kind of exception that, I mean, this seemed like this seems like it's a wholesale cutting of the Gordian knot here. I wouldn't be able to go to work for and provide advice and support. I suppose I could do it for free.
Yeah.
But I mean, had you thought more about that?
Well, in that context, I guess, really overall, they're trying to curb the influence of special interests, which now they rule. And I don't know, how some of these things that in my own mind, I think, well, how would they enforce this and how would they find out or whatever. But, and the problem right now, they did pass a form of lobbying reform as far as eliminating gifts and money from domestic lobbyists. However, they don't have any real punishment for it. I mean, it's just this would actually, they would impose substantial fines on those who violated those rules.
I don't know when it was, but I said, what about lobbyists? What if there was then you get into privacy issues maybe, but it's come up in one of these discussions. If a lobbyist is meeting with a person in the United States Senate or the House of Representatives, why can't it be on a television camera? And why can't it be on C-SPAN 3? And then I can listen to what I, as a citizen, can listen to, can we presume that it's all going to be legitimate and legal? Well, if it's legitimate and legal, that is to say what the lobbyist is proposing, then it is nothing but politics that prevents me, as a citizen and a constituent, from hearing the appeal of the lobbyist. So I thought, well, why not have rooms set aside? They have confessionals in churches, and no, but I was serious about floating this balloon. If we're, I don't like a lot of closed door meetings, and it's also to say that if the lobbyists have some valuable information, is it only valuable to my representative or my senator? Or is it valuable to me? I think it's valuable to me. So I was interested in the lobbying excerpt there. Becky, you can take a final shot, and then I'm going to say good evening and thank you.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for inviting me, and I really appreciate the exposure and having people being able to call in and ask questions. So. Thank you very much.
Did you want folks to have an address where they can write you, or a
Sure.
phone number, or you want to tell them your address?
Sure. It's 22 Meadow Lane, Clancy, Montana, 59634.
It's 22 Meadow Lane, MEADOW, Meadow Lane, Clancy, Montana, zip code
59634.
So that's it. Becky, thanks for coming over, and best of luck in your future campaigns. And I've said it before, thanks for campaigning.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks for watching. Thanks for watching and listening. Thanks for calling in, and thanks to the crew for once again coming through for Uncle Mac. And music up, and we'll say good night.
Die young, you get raised in them old New York Times. So mamas, don't let your cowboys grow up to be writers. Don't let them scribble and daydream too much. Make them be teachers and actors and such.